Welcome to the last presentation in this summer's 6th annual Tony Woyak Festival, sponsored by the Washburn Area Historical Society and the Washburn Heritage Association. This series is made possible by a grant from the Apostle Islands Historic Preservation Conservancy. And the music this evening is provided by Warren Nelson with special guests Otis McLennan, Randy Sabine, and Severin Bainan, and it is sponsored by Don and Catherine Ekstrom.
Yes.
Yes. We invite you to stay after the presentation for more music and refreshments, and technical assistance tonight was provided by Lynn Adams and Andrew Grimm. Thank you to the Harbor View for hosting this series, and we hope to see you in January when the 7th annual festival gets underway. We are fortunate to have with us tonight Betty Ferris. But before I introduce Betty, Washburn Mayor Scott Griffiths wants to say a couple of words about the Broke-Down. Mayor Griffiths.
Thank you all for coming out tonight. I haven't been able to make it to too many of these events. Tuesday nights are a busy night for me on a couple of other fronts. But when the city made the, I will call it the bold move to purchase the Broke-Down Palace, I reached out to Carla Bremner and asked her if she would be willing to try and find someone that would do some research and share the history of the Broke-Down Palace. Now, I know that for many of you, the Broke-Down Palace is probably not how you refer to this building. For myself, I've had some great parties in there. I've eaten some great pizza in there. I've danced to some great bands in there. I've been to fundraisers there. I've even built some giant puppets in that building. And for me, it became really challenging to watch it start to languish and not be a thriving center in the middle of our downtown. And so we began to propose that the city do something to try and make that shift. And so we did. Earlier this year, we did purchase the building. It's now empty. My original hope for this evening was that we would actually host this in the Broke-Down and host a little bit of a gathering and an event in the building. Unfortunately, insurance companies aren't real fond of that. So we continued on with the tradition of holding these events down here at Harbor View. And I personally am really excited to see and hear and learn more about the history, and hopefully all of you here tonight can help us share and create a vision for the future of the Broke-Down Palace as well. So thank you to the Tony Woyak History Festival, and thanks to everyone who helped organize this, and I'm really looking forward to handing it over to Betty Ferris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Betty Ferris may have originally hailed from Kansas, but she has been researching and writing stories about life in northern Wisconsin for over 30 years. As a social historian, she has uncovered the pictures, letters, and documents that reveal the intriguing human stories from the past. And Betty has used these photos to create spectacular visuals for many Chautauqua presentations. Along the way, through years of working at the Big Top, she has met many of our country's famous musicians, and Betty infuses her history telling with a passion for social justice for all peoples. She has worked tirelessly to advocate for the rights of disabled persons and minority populations throughout Wisconsin and beyond. Tonight, Betty is going to tell us the history of the building that many still call the Broke-Down Palace. Please join me in giving a special warm welcome to Betty Ferris.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you all for coming. This is quite thrilling. And I want to just clarify one thing. This isn't the history of the Broke-Down Palace site. This is part of the history of it. And but I do believe that it's the first draft. So I brought some cards. I have some. have a bunch of 3x5 cards, and I was going to pass them around, but I didn't. I want everyone here who wants to jump up and correct me or add something, and I'm sure there are many, many things to add, to be willing to take a card and write your name and contact information on it. And I think this is the beginning of a developing story that we can create some interesting exhibits and memorable experiences around, because this is the tip of the iceberg, what I'm giving you tonight. I said if walls could speak, because I wish they could. They can't, so I'm speaking for them to the best of my ability. Before moving into the era of white settlement, it's always important to acknowledge the people who were the original people here. And this beautiful Ojibwa beading only is representative of one of the tribes which called this place home. They happen to be the dominant tribal presence now. So I just want to acknowledge their presence for just one moment. And then we're going to move into the great stand of white pine that dominated the northern two-thirds of Wisconsin, and where we are standing right now. You're probably well aware of this, but I'm going to repeat it anyway. It was said that these white pine trees, which stood, over 100 feet tall in many instances, that people could see through them for a block or more. There was no underbrush. It was just cathedral-like. So that's what was here and dominated the broke-down palace site for many, many centuries until it became settled. So that's another thing that it's important to remember. Dora Kling spoke last week about the walking trail, the fantastic walking trail that we have that runs along our lakeshore, which for so many decades was dominated by sawmills and the lumber industry, and she discussed that and told stories about that, so I'm not going to go into that again. I'm going to go straight to 1882, and Bayfield had already been founded. Ashland had already been founded. LaPointe was way before everybody, because it was actually one of the French fur trading outposts in the 1600s. So, but right around 1882, the Chicago, St. Paul, Minneapolis, and Omaha Railroad, always referred to as the Omaha Road, got interested in Washburn because it had, right off the shore, it had a 25-foot drop. And that was the deepest harbor up here. So it was very attractive. And they were looking for a place to have over a northern terminus for their railroad so they could bring grain that was being milled in the west and then taken to the cities and the Washburn Crosby mills there. They wanted to be able to ship that to Buffalo, and they were looking for a terminus. And so in 1882, this gentleman, John Jacobs, brought a party of he brought a party of these Omaha Road executives, including Mr. Linton, the president, also a man named J.A. Humbird, who was connected with the Omaha Road, C.H. Pratt, H.A. Schwann, Sam Fifield, and then Sampson and Carrington, who were civil engineers. And they came over on the Little Eva Wadsworth, and they decided where this massive dock and whole elevator and merchandise dock, and they designed the whole layout. And so eventually, in 1983, they made it this far. And at that point, Washburn had a railroad, but it didn't have anything else. And so they created this entity called the Bay Land and Improvement Company and began selling lots. And that, in 1984, became the first deed that I was able to uncover. And there it is in the Register of Deeds office. And one of the things I want to say is I was unable to locate the abstract for this property, 135 years. And there were all kinds of difficulties, but I'm not making excuses. I'm really just explaining that it's a very thick network and web, really, of transactions that have happened over and over again, and the property's changed hands many, many times, as I'm sure you are all aware. So anyway, this says that the Bay Land and Improvement Company, who had they founded the town, they actually set up the town, they sold the property. The people who incorporated it were deeply connected, if not actually employed by and owners of the the Omaha Road. So here they are investors creating the Bay Land Improvement Company and then selling lots through the Bay Land and Improvement Company to themselves. And so I don't know, but now I'm using a computer and I have to type this thing. All right. So they sold lots in Block 45, which is that block that's still there, lots 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And they sold them for $700. If you could read that writing, you could see there. And this guy, J.A. Humbird, who was on the Eva Wadsworth, he was one of the people with his fingers in a lot of the pies. Now, I'm not condemning that. I'm simply noting it, just as a journalist. My personal opinion has nothing to do with anything. So that's how it started. And so eventually, soon, there was this whole incredible, I can actually go to, that's what it eventually looked like. But I want to go back just a little bit because even though this picture of the Washburn Depot, I just found this, so I just had to put this up here. Even though this is not 1883, that engine is. It's a Baldwin 1883 engine, and it's the one that was in here. So I think that's kind of thrilling. And there was also this big roundhouse. Has anybody ever seen a picture of that like this? I hadn't either. So it had 6 stalls, and it was for all those engines. So this was quite the happening place. And you can see that the Omaha Road built the elevator. They basically owned everything, blah, blah, blah. And here we are. And if you look on the far end there, it's a little blurry. Basically, there's nothing on the site. So for that period of time. So, but eventually it did become a new and thriving town until 1888 when the whole first block burned. Now remember where Bitzer's Big Dollar used to be? That's the former Opera House? And the Opera House door is still there, back by the alley. That was here. And then it went all the way, it was a whole block there. Because the founders of the town thought that the town was going to grow east. But it didn't, it kept growing west and west and west instead. Closer to the mills and just the way that towns will do, whether you want them to or not. So rebuilding, of course, is the name of the game, and we're nothing if not brave and courageous and resourceful. So it did keep moving along, and by the late 1890s, it actually was quite a thriving place. The next time that property changes hands is in 1898. I'm kind of having a hard time seeing, where now the Omaha Road is selling that same property to Prudhomme, the H.C. Prudhomme, and I'm trying to see how much they sold it to him for. I think it was $400. And then he sold it in 1900 to a guy named M.A. Sprague, Monroe Sprague, and not this last time, but the lecture before was one of the Sprague family here, kind of telling the story of that. And so I think he paid $400 for it. Then somebody else who just appeared out of nowhere and was one of the witnesses to this sale sold it back that very same day, December 18th, 1900, to Prudhomme for $200, the very same day. Now this is not for me to fathom. This is beyond my ability. So something was going on there, whatever it was. So it moved right along, and then Meehan, this F.J. Meehan, who built your building, the building that Schwamben Books is in, and had a big furniture store, he bought it for $1, and this was and other valuable considerations, which shall remain nameless, apparently, because they're never named. So that was in 1901. So now we're at 1901, but still nothing's there, as far as I can see. So I just kind of went through decade by decade. There are a bunch of decades, so I'm going to kind of move along here. The first time, this is Amos Hansen, the one whose name was on that building, and actually it's known as the Hansen Block over and over. He was a furniture maker and an undertaker, and those two things often go together for obvious reasons, and not just here, like everywhere. So this is he when he was a young man full of hope. And he came here, and he did make a good go of it. I was unable to find when he built that building, or I still need that. So here's a little 3x5 card, if anybody wants to help me figure that out. Right next door is the A.I. Lean building, and that eventually became the post office, and it's now Coco's. And it's gone through many reincarnations, but we're not going to dwell on it. The only thing I want to point out is that it is still, at this point in 1910, when A.I. Lean is standing with a man named John Anderson, proud of something that had to do with this store, spiffed up or something. The Hansen Block still is wood. It's still the best shot I can get of it. So this is a picture of it, I think, even though it looks, I'm not sure what happened to that other building, but pretty sure that's it. And so here's what happens. In 1918, A.I. Lean grants Hansen an easement to build a common wall. And that common wall had, and it's just all kinds of things are written down in it, specifications and covenants and requirements, because A.I. Lean did not want any schlocky building next to him. He was quite particular, and so good for him. And he was also a very interesting man. His house is up on 3rd Avenue. It's one of my very favorite houses in town. Carl Brasky and can't think of what her husband, Kenny Svetkovich. I have owned it for many years. But anyway, he granted this easement so that Hansen could build this common wall. And money, and he said, okay. And he gave it to him for $1 and other valuable considerations. So now there it is, and you can see that that's it. So that's actually the building right now. And later on, towards the end, I'm going to just show some pictures of the interior of it and of the current broke down palace or building. And you will see that you'll be able to see the wall. And now you'll know kind of what it is. But he was still there. You can't really, it's not a high enough resolution thing, but those are skis. He's selling skis, and he's diversified his line. So you got your coffins, and then you got your skis. So, and then who knows, maybe bassinets or cradles or something, cradle to grave, and have fun in between. And this is an ad that he had in 1920. This is the 1922 blizzard. Who remembers that? Nobody, but you probably heard tales of it from your grandparents or something. So that was pretty heavy duty. And in 1922, this was his other, he was kind of a clever person, doing his best to hang on, which he didn't really do, because by 1924, he was gone. And this is what Washburn looked like right around that time, just before that. And isn't that charming? It really is. I just love those little light fixtures, and I just think that's quite pleasant, and it's changed quite dramatically. Now I have this up here because there was a theater in Washburn. There was always a theater, and the Rex Theater gets confused in people's minds with the later Washburn Theater, which was actually in that structure. So you'll hear stories, and it doesn't really matter. But eventually, that theater became, I think it was the Lake, and it might have also been the Bijou, and maybe the Gem. It did all kinds of things. And the thing that is common with buildings around Washburn, especially in small communities like this, is that they're multi-purpose. They serve various functions throughout time. So the history of the broke down palace site and that, just going through all these diverse roles is not uncommon. Hang on just for 1 second. All right. So, this is a picture of the Rex Theater, and it was in the Rate Building. And the Rate Building is where the Chautauqua office is right now. So that spot in town has always had to do with entertainment and music and theater and fun and all kinds of stuff. And it stood there until '67. Eventually, the Masonic Lodge took it over, and then they took that old building down and built the new building that the Chautauqua office is now in. So when you hear about theaters, or we used to do this or that, and you have a little card and you want to write it down, just keep in mind that the Washburn Theater wasn't the only one. It was predated by the Rex. In 1928, I mean, it was the 20s. Things were not good. So in 1928, the Hanson Building was purchased by the county board for the American Legion. Now, I'm happy to have somebody verify that. That's as far as I know, that's actually true. And so then, for a long time, it was known as the Legion Building, or Legion Hall, I guess is how it was referred to. In 1936, there was a major construction street reshifting. 36, that's when there was a 90-degree turn, and that got made a little more mellow. That's where that curve is. And so buildings got torn down. I'm just going to step over here and just point. So there, you see the Hanson Bridge. So this whole thing on the end was a bank, and I guess that got torn down. And it was known, though, you can see the DeMars. Does anybody remember this era? No? Jimmy? So I just wanted to show those pictures because by now, all the blocks are the same because they're platted that way. So they have to stay the same. But the addresses have changed, so when you look at a certain address, it's not that anymore, and that's because in 1936, everything shifted. I hope we don't shift with this little storm coming in. Now, I don't have any pictures whatsoever of this structure when it was Legion Hall. But I did hear over and over again, anecdotally, that roller skating was like a big thing. So I just looked up roller skates in the 1940s. Are these like you were talking about? Okay, I was hoping so, because like some people who shall remain nameless had skates with little boots. But this is what they had at the Legion Hall, and everybody was pretty grateful for it, I think. So, and they skated, right? The skating rink was on the side of the building that was the closest to the Lean building, the Cocos. And one year in 1940, every year they had it's like a summer festival, and they'd have a carnival. The water fights were going on, even then, between the fire departments. And so it was a precursor, kind of designing the format for what now is Brownstone Days. So I think that would also be an interesting story to pursue some time for some future thing. But I know that one year in 1940, Virgil, the world-famous magician, was not on a world tour. He was here in Washburn at Legion Hall. Yes, and so that must have been quite the thrill. It certainly got some press. Okay, now we're up at 1944, and the building changes hands again somehow, and the let's see, what was their name again? Trying to think. Well, I'll get to it in a minute. Anyway, 1949 is when the Washburn Theater opened, and this is an ad from the high school yearbook. That was really a very good place to find, ads, especially people who are trying to pump themselves. It had 315 seats. That's a pretty nice size house. And at that point, when it became a theater, the floor was dug out and sloped, and then so that the screen could be seen. And it was quite a bit like it is right now. And these are just some of the shows that year. You want to just take a look at it? So they weren't messing around. They were getting, the films. And they had matinees, they had 2 evening shows, and they had Sunday things. And then coming attractions, they were running it like an official movie theater. What? Chicken every what? Oh. So, then in 1950, there was a whole new front on the building. And so that looks kind of pretty. And you can see right here that there was a rainbow grill in there. And then new people had taken over this Palms apparel shop. So you can read what that says. It's, oh, Mrs. Eisenberg. There you go. Eisenberg purchased the building in the fall of 1948, and after 5 months, the theater was complete. So I should have put that first. But I have to comment, his wife actually purchased it, Sarah. But of course, she couldn't have her name in there because we know why. So anyway, the Clearys, I think David Bradley's auntie, was one of the ones running this. And so, see those junior co-ed pinafores? That's where girls would go to get their little gym. Remember those blue things? I was still wearing those in the 60s. That was rather appalling, but we got over it. Anyway, so that's what it was, a clothing store. And they took over the store from the Palms. And I like this. You could get a brunch coat for $2.98. So that's pretty nice. So there it is in 1955. And it looks pretty sweet. And that Woody's nice too. And so you can see where, you know, Coco's right there. And then you can see this building. And then you can see them right here. Marquee that says Washburn. So that's where the theater was. And that is all part of the property that the city purchased. So they've got that whole block, or we, not they, we have that whole block now. Then in '54, Ed and Barbara Kernan bought the Washburn Theater. And I got so thrilled as a person who's quite interested in projection professionally when I saw this was on the deed. I couldn't believe they had that whole thing there. And I wonder if I need to move. I'm not going to touch anything because last time we touched it and it went on. So
Elizabeth Hawks there.
yeah, and I got quite excited about that because Elizabeth Hawks was the notary who went out. But these two Brennkert projectors, and the lamp houses. These were top level projectors. So this was not just some, you know, mom and pop nickel and dime thing. These were top quality things. The Goldie Rewind tools, blah, 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 rectifiers, and 45 RCA record player and records. These are all the things that went along with it, all the drapes and the curtains and the screen and the speaker. And but the thing that really got me was the quality of the projection and the fact that they could actually run these films that they were getting shipped in. It was pretty impressive. The only thing that's left in the building is the metal work table, and that's it. So all those little spaces down there were where these big reels would get stored, and then who knows what all that other stuff is. But that was really exciting to see that, and to look through the little projection window, which is still there, and imagine what it was like to be up there, you know, projecting these films for a whole house full of 315 people, you know, with their mouths open, excited to see these Hollywood stars on the big screen in their own hometown. Simultaneously, and I think this started back in the when it was still Legion Hall, they actually put a rifle range in the basement. And you know, over the years it was a tavern, so tavern and rifle range. What could go wrong? I don't know. I don't think anybody got blown away there, but they it was quite a serious thing. And I think Leo Justice, is that your dad's name, Jen? He ran the thing, and this just happens to be his son. And they actually had to do, go through a protocol, learn their stuff about using their arms, and then they had competitions. So people would come from all over to Washburn to have these competitions. And I guess the building runs 100 feet to the back, but they only used 50 feet. So they were shooting at 50 feet. And I just said, rifles? Really? And yeah, there it is. So this is the Justice son, Tom, one of the sons, and he just won his thing. So now Oddballs. And we all know Oddballs has moved everywhere and made his hamburgers in every location he could possibly find. And this was one of them. So he was in there in 1964. And it was a friendly tavern. And it had color TV. And so you could meet your friends there. Next door to the post office. And, practice your rifle downstairs. Then it changed hands and became the Amber Glow. Now, who remembers the Amber Glow? Raise your hands. All right, now's when I should just turn it over to everybody. This is some homecoming, and that's his little sign. What do you think? 70s? Yeah, kind of looks like it from the clothes. Now, in 1976, the Washburn High School, the DuPont School, or Washburn High School, was full of radicals. And they made a break with tradition. And they decided to have their junior prom at the Amber Glow. They said, we've had it with the gym. We're going to the Amber Glow. And they got away with it. Now, and the first prom, king and queen, were Candy Ross Yonan and Mike. I think Candy's here tonight. I don't think she brought her crown. So, if those of you don't know, Patsy Avery of Patsy's Bar is Mike's mom, and then Ross Marine and Jan, and so she's a Ross. So anyway, it doesn't get more local than that. But what I like about this picture, in addition to it's them, and Lorraine Young arranged for me to get this. You can see the stage behind them. And the guys with their... Who was playing that night? Do you remember?
Led Zeppelin.
Who? Now, this picture was taken 10 years later.
Wow.
And this was Dick and Sandy Johnson's son's wedding. Is that right? And this band right here is Dee Dee Sham. Anybody remember Dee Dee Sham? Okay. That's Bucky Hawker.
Dave Anderson.
Oh, really?
Drummer.
Oh, that's Dave Anderson. All right, good. That's Donnie Schroffnagel. So that's pretty funny. But darling, funny in a darling way. So Party Central. Then it was actually Pier 1 by then. And Pier 1 was the end of that era. And it went Amber Glow, Archie's, Fish House. Oh, and then it was Aces Over Eights. And then it was Pier 1. And this was just a continual attempt for various people to get in there and make something happen. And it was just always not quite working. And it so wasn't working that by the time the Pier 1 was gone. It had been abandoned, and the water pipes were all broken, and it was quite a mess. So, you have to hang on for 1 minute. Never mind. That's all right. So it was looking kind of like this when Mark Halverson from Mankato decided, and he was working with his dear friend and fellow law school student. They were students together in law school, and they got together and decided that they were going to purchase this building and turn it into a music venue and restore it. And so they struggled with the city council and eventually got the approval to they had a liquor license approved, because obviously you could not have a bar and a music venue. You've got to have alcohol. I'm sorry, you just do. This is Wisconsin. And so that was that. And so that was good. And that was a precursor, because that was that was it. That was the deal breaker. And so that was nice. So there it was, kind of all fixed up. And you can see Oddball had moved next door by then. Yeah. And then Small World was in there after that. He sold it to them. And then Coco's came in. And aren't we happy? We're so thrilled. And look at what they put back there for us, too. Oh, my heavens. Okay, so here we are at the Broke Down. And so the Mark Halverson and Mark Perrine are both Deadheads, which, for those of you who don't know, means you love the Grateful Dead and you just love the Grateful Dead. Period. And Mark Halverson has a radio show out of Mankato on public radio that he's had for like 30-some years or something, and it's called Dead Air. So they were throwing names around about what should we call this venue, and all of a sudden, Broke Down Palace, which is a well-known Grateful Dead song, came up, and then that was that. It was Broke Down Palace because it was a broke down palace. So it could have been more appropriate. So by 1991, they redid the roof, they redid the radiators, they heated with wood the entire time they were there, and I think it's still wood heated. So that is intense, labor intensive sort of a deal. But and so this is their first year that they're up. Can you even see that? Can somebody? I can't see it either.
Norm has a T-shirt with all the names on it.
Okay. Does he? Not from 91. This is their first poster.
Where's Norm?
If I had this, I could read it, but I can't get into this. Do it. So can somebody read that? I just want, let me see. Here's one thing I know. Goonie Birds. Who's there? Mellow Fellows out of Chicago. Otis and the Alligators. Now, Otis and the Alligators, as far as I know, you played the first year and the last year. So you were the bookends on this phenomena. And Molly and the Haymakers. I'm pretty sure Lost Nation's on there. And I see on July 20-something or other, Prudence Johnson and Randy Sabine. So right here in this room, playing for you tonight, are 3 of the people who are on that poster. So that's kind of cool. And Severin Vainan, of course. He didn't play there, but he was there, off and on. And so here's year 2. And let's see who we have. Oh no, I wanted to get back here. Oh, maybe not. What year is that? 92. It was 92. Because the thing about Mark Halverson and Mark Perrine they love the Grateful Dead and they love blues. That is, they are blues, blues, blues. And that's why Otis was there, because Otis is a blues lover, and that's his genre. So one of the things that they were quite excited about in their second season was getting Robert Lockwood Jr., who actually, I think he passed away maybe 10 years later, but there he was there, and he was the stepson of the famous blues icon, Robert Johnson. This is Robert Johnson's, when he was on the stamp. I just didn't get the little things on the edges. So that was one of their coups that they were quite excited about. Oh no, now we're back to 92. Oh, maybe he was here the first year. Anyway, once again, we have Otis, we have Molly, we got Prudence and Randy, and then now we have Gary Rue. And even though Lost Nation's not there in the summer, because we were doing a few other things up on Ashwa Bay at that time, because we'd started Chautauqua in 1986, I'm sure that the band played there in the winter. So this is just their summer thing. And so here we have, and just, I don't know, Shangoya, remember Shangoya, that reggae band, Tony Brown, another famous reggae band, kind of guessing here. All right, Molly and the Haymakers. Do you, let's see, we have Molly, we have Andy D, we have Joe Lindsayus back there on the drums. I don't know these other two people, but that's a long tenure, you know, to keep playing. So, and then I have no idea who this is, but Mark Halverson, bless his heart, dug in at the last moment and scanned some of these pictures. So these are just the interior of it. And see, people aren't throwing, you know, tequila at each other, and they're not like raising H-E-double-L. They're, you know, listening to the band. It was an actual venue. Not that there weren't wild, crazy things happening there, happily. So I don't know who this is, but she's obviously working the tables. Here's the bar. You may remember the bar. There was one on, it kind of was on both sides under this archway. So that's, this looks like the side that was the roller. That's where you skated, I think. And then this is just a little scene behind the bar. Now this is Otis. Is that you? That's Otis and the Alligators right there. But here's the thing that Mark wanted. He asked me, please point this out.
The disco.
Now, the disco ball had been there for some time. I think he didn't put it up there. It was sort of classic. But he said he does have it. He's got the disco ball. And he's also got the Hammond B3 organ, which the blues players came in, and I guess it weighs 500 pounds, so you're not going to take it on the road. So when they hear that there was this fabulous organ, then they were all thrilled and felt like, okay, well, it can't be that bad, even though it's way up there. And I've never heard of Washburn. There was, you know, it wasn't just a party place. This is Homecoming and the French Club. I saw Madame Cole. And so that was your French cafe. And now that moved into the cultural center for a while. And now the Historical Society, we provide an ethnic dessert cafe. So you started a great tradition there that we're hopefully carrying on. And so here we go. We got Washburn's Music Club, Big John Dickerson, and Downright Tight. So there's a nice little diversity there. Here we are again. It kind of looks like a rainy homecoming. So, but everybody was still having fun, I'm sure. Now for a while, Brian Regner ran it. I just wanted to put this up. Oh, the Regners are here. So that's good. But I thought this was cool because of the t-shirts that are up there. And so here, live tonight, the Goonie Birds from Chicago and the Mellow Fellows. And I think they were with Big Twist and the Mellow Fellows, but then I think Big Twist passed away. The Mellow Fellows were still going. Now, we don't know who that is.
That's Pete.
Is it Pete Falconer?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now we know who that is. So we got Mark Perrine, we have Andy Oakey, and we've got Mark Halverson and Pete Falconer. I didn't think that was Pete, but maybe it is. All right, so they were kind of running the thing at that point. And then it was done, and it was for sale. And so that's where we're at. And I can't, oh, great. Well, I kind of done anyway, but I have a kind of a novel. I've got a little cord problem. So
What year was that,
now,
Betty?
What year?
when he actually put it up for sale.
What year was that, Betty?
That's what I'm trying to remember. It was for sale for a long time. I can ask Mark the actual year, sorry. He just emailed these things to me because he's at a Twins game today with Mark Perrine. And so he's not available for me to check, but I bet that is his phone number, 507 Mankato. That's an area code down there, I recognize it. Anyway, I'm sorry I can't answer that. I'm afraid of those. But now I have a little thing I want to end with. There's all those pictures of the broke down palace are courtesy of Mark, who jumped on this. But when it went for sale wasn't when it was sold. It was finally sold in 2004 to Deb Collison, who then became Deb Schwantes. And so Matthew and Deb Schwantes have owned it for the last 13 years. And the reason I'm not talking about anything like that is because this is in our living memory. You don't need me to tell you anything about that. But I did want to thank Mark because he kind of went above and beyond, and he didn't know me from Adam, so that was really sweet. So now Randy is going to come up, I think. First of all, I want to say I don't think I've gone over my time. No, I'm doing exactly right. And so I was supposed to take an intermission, but that seems silly because what we'd like to do is just take a little break after this last little closing bit. So you can all visit the bar or get a beverage. I know I need one. And then come back and listen to some awesome music. And I'm so grateful. I can't thank these people enough. So, and the reason why, it was funny because when I went in there in May or March, April 1st, right when that sale was going on, and I thought, oh my gosh, because I had to go, we were going on the road with Chautauqua, so I had to be in Reedsburg, so I just ran in there with my phone, and the first thing I see is this on the drywall, back behind the stage, and so he wrote, this is a quote from the song Broke Down Palace. Here, do you want to use mine?
Are you done talking?
I am as soon as I do one thing, and I'm almost done with it. I do want to say this though. Jan Bergman and Joan Bradley were my assistants, and they helped me so much. And Lorraine Young, David Bradley, of course, the Gago girls, Sandy, Jane, and Carol, and their husbands. And Signa Groves, I don't think she's here, but this is just the beginning. But these are people who thought, Betty's got to have some help here. And so they jumped on, and that was super sweet. Here, the thing I wanted to also mention, I put this up because you can't really see that. That's Steve Eccles. So one time when Randy played there, that must have been 1991, in addition to with Prudence and Gary Rue, he also was playing with the Eccles brothers, and so Steve signed that. And I thought that was kind of cool. So I'm just going to play or show some pictures that go, here you go. I'm done now. Thanks for coming.